to Sagas and Sass Season 3. I'm Tara, along with fellow hosts Nick and Jonathan.
This episode will cover parts 1 and 2 of the Hod King, the third installment in Josiah Bancroft's Books of Babel series.
If you're watching live, join us in the chat, or after the fact, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Sagas and Sass to continue the conversation. And just a reminder, the views expressed in this show are those of the hosts as individuals and do not necessarily represent the show as a whole.
As we know, Arm of the Sphinx ended with one heck of a cliffhanger. So when we meet back up with Senlin and the Hod King, it's a bit of a letdown. He's basically just living his life in Pelthia as a really boring Boscopian accountant named Cyril Pinfield, sending his reports to the Sphinx. Though to be fair, he's ignoring the whole don't do anything involving Myra thing, as he insists on, doing the opposite of that. Even if we ignore him attending the awful play about her, he is so blatantly ignoring orders that you just know something is going to go wrong. And when Senlin comes across two Pelthians attacking a Hod, because of course that would happen, he intervenes. But then the Hod straight up murders the two men, so Senlin pieces out, only to eventually admit what happened anyway. He did take the book the Hod left behind, and hides it when the authorities, a man named General Eigengrau, no relation, and a wakeman named Georgine Haste, comes calling to question him. He is saved, if you can call it that, when in the midst of the questioning, an invitation from the Duke arrives. Now, the Duke is currently married to Myra, and this invitation is in response to Senlin posing as Cyril Pinfield, contacting him about monetizing Myra's mermaid persona. Now, when Senlin meets Duke Pell, he actually likes him, so it seems as if he might need to want to back off, especially when he finally gets a one-on-one with Myra, and she tells him to go to GTFO. Unfortunately, though Senlin's first impression was wrong. I mean, really, are any of us shocked about that, though? Bueller?
The TLDR is that Senlin meets with Pell at the Coliseum again. Pell is immediately a huge asshole. The whole thing is a trick anyway, and Senlin ends up with a metal bucket locked over his head and is shoved unceremoniously into the Black Trail along with his old friend Tarot. Because, oh yeah, by the way, Tarot was a fighter in the Coliseum, and Senlin was going to try to free him, and yeah, listen, it all just turned into a big old mess in which Tarot gets screwed because he's friends with Senlin, and it's the Black Trail for them. Thankfully, if we can even use that word, Senlin and Tarot find some of Marat's people who remove Senlin's awful metal helmet, who remove Senlin's awful metal helmet, accept his and Tarot's professions of their faith in Marat and his goals, whatever they are, and are sent off with none other than Finn Gold to prove their worth or something. In far more exciting news, Iron and Velita stroll into Pelthia like they own the place. There's fanfare. They meet the king. Velita convinces them to let Squit free when they try to cage her, and then Velita is simply Velita, prancing around on rooftops in her nightgown, and is dubbed the Leaping Lady. This leads to her getting invited to a lot of special parties and events, which her hostess Xenia absolutely loves, even when Velita has caught the attention of the sleazy Pelthian prince, whose name we don't even care to note because he's a sleazy POS.
Meanwhile, Aren is constantly worried about Velita, though Xenia's governess Anne does everything she can to help Aren handle things, which is really sweet, and Anne is great, and we all love her, and there shall be no argument about how awesome she is, ever. Anyway, unfortunately, Velita and Xenia are invited by Sleazeball number 1 to see Mario's show, and he tricks Velita with a backstage pass and Aren with a story that Velita has passed out, while Velita does get to talk to Maria and meet the child that is very obviously Senlin's. Aren gets locked in the fur coat closet, and Sleazeball McGee traps Velita in Maria's dressing room and tries to assault her, because he's a fucking sleazeball. Velita is able to fight back because she's a badass, but in the scuffle, she is shot in the head. Back to Anne being the best. She figures out something is wrong, goes in search of Aren. She's able to help Aren escape from the closet. Aren runs off after Velita, finds her fatally wounded in Maria's dressing room, kills Sleazeball fucknuts, realizes Velita still has a heartbeat, and scoops up her charge to rush her to the state-of-the-art and hopefully save her life, until she arrives at the port to see the ship shot down by the Ararat. And with that very fast and very loose summary, welcome to our first Hod King discussion.
Yes, that was a very fast and loose summary that I wrote very last minute because real life got in the way. Okay. gosh, so much happened in the first 2 parts of this book. It was a lot less, I don't wanna call the first 2 parts of Arm of the Sphinx boring, because they were not, but there a lot more happened, right, in the first 2 parts of this book.
Mhm.
So, part 1 is called The Mermaid, and it finishes off with a kind of extra chapter called The Black Trail. And I guess I just wanna start by saying, lol at the Boscopian stuff and
Mm.
Senlin just eating toast and drinking warm water. And the fact that they're all, like, accountants and nobody ever wants to talk to them because 'cause they're accountants and they're boring, like, it was a weird, silly aside, but it was very amusing to me, especially as I used to work in accounting. So, I don't know, it was boring because at least for, a little bit, nothing was really happening, and Senlin was really maddening. So, thoughts on him being a Buscopian, thoughts on anything about the Buscopian persona, or I just in general, what all was going on with him?
Mostly I just thought it was hilarious that he had to go from this, like, essentially, like, almost starving to death, on the ship, and then through the whole issues that he dealt with in the, bottomless library, and then he finally has access to, like, all this food, whatever he wants, basically, has actually, like, has money again, and he can't use it to have anything good. He has to have, like, the blandest stuff because that's the persona that he's been given.
Yeah, and also just the general, like, how he notes the general kind of, like, frustration and almost disgust
Mm,
with which the people in the hotel treat him. And he hands them money, he's, like, tipping, I think, left and right, from what I remember. So it's
mhm.
like they like that he's tipping them well, but they're also like, "Oh, this guy, what is with his toast and his lukewarm water?" It was just very, and like you said, he went from having nothing and almost being starving at points to being able to do whatever he wants monetarily, except he can't because this is the boring persona that the Sphinx has, shoved on him so that he doesn't attract attention, which God, he fails miserably at, right? Like, Senlin normally is not a person who would attract a ton of attention, especially when he's supposed to be playing this boring ass person who just eats toast and drinks like room temperature tap water, but he still manages to attract attention somehow. Uh,
Well, part of that was bad luck, and part of it is his own obsession.
with Maria, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we
I
all
mean,
knew that he wasn't just going to ignore Maria.
yeah, yes, he was out and about, and he shouldn't have been because he went to the play. But seeing the murder was bad luck, and
Seeing it was bad luck. Doing something about it was, like, for sure necessary and absolutely in character, but also just,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, bang your head on a, like, head meet desk, right?
Sinlin, Sinlin, Sinlin.
And I think that, like, him, I mean, also, like, well, it wasn't that the thing is, he did witness the murder, but what he was originally witnessing and what he, fought back against was the Hod being beaten by two, ne'er-do-well, quote unquote nobles, whatever, whatever passes in Pelphia for being a noble, and he broke in and he saved the guy from being beaten up, whatever, maybe beaten to death. And it's the Hod that just bricks those two guys in the head.
Mhm.
Like, and that says, and I guess maybe that should have tipped so many things off, because he because in the past, everything we've seen with the Hods, minus Marat and his crew, but even then, they're only doing it within their realm. This is a Hod who is out in public and sure, he gets attacked, and don't get me wrong, the guys certainly deserve to be taken care of, but maybe not, murdered. I don't know. It's one of those, like, I don't like these guys either, but did they deserve to die? I don't know. But they do.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
So, and then on top of that, Senlin, he brings the book that the Hod drops back to his hotel, and the book is it's on trilobites. I'm like, I was about to say tribolites, and I was like, no,
It's a biology. It's a biology book.
Tribolites sounds Star Trek-y. I'm talking about trilobites, the ye old, like they're fossils, right? And it's a biology book that focuses on them, and it's very odd because it's not actually blacked out the way that he's seen the Hod. So the Hod was carrying this book, but he wasn't blacking it out. And so he's carrying this book, and he brings it back to his room. Now he does hide it. He hides it when he's carrying it back. He hides it in his room, and then he still, goes to the concierge or hotel manager or whoever the guy is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he goes to the concierge hotel manager guy, and he's like, yeah, so I just witnessed this. Send the authorities. Fucking why, Senlin? I mean, I don't know. Like, what do you guys say? Why did he not?
That part made zero sense to me.
Right?
Like, why would you do that?
It was plot convenience for introducing Eigengrau, which is also funny.
Yes.
Jonathan, I didn't even. I loved your like no relation thing because I forgot your name is super close to that. Jonathan's last name is Eigen,
I don't have the growl in it.
But so I think it was really mostly just plot convenience for introducing the two of them, because even though he does run into Eigengrau again later, he probably wouldn't have run into Georgine Haste, the Wakeman, outside of this, because the Coliseum where he eventually runs into Eigengrau again is a men's only club. Feel very like Tim the Toolman Taylor talking about it. Oh Lord. So he does hide the book from them, but again, it's a lot of plot convenience here. It's plot convenience that it's maybe not plot convenience, but on purpose to move the plot forward, but for literally no other reason, that he admits what happened, because nobody witnessed anything other than him coming back to the hotel covered in whitewash. And oh my gosh, when they make him ride the luggage cart through the lobby, because the guy's like, don't drip your whitewash nonsense on my carpets. That was so hilarious. Like, random aside, but very hilarious. But he there was really no reason for him to admit what he did at all. And he does anyway, I guess, maybe just because he's done them, but also convenience. But then he's in the midst of, being questioned, and he gets his invitation from Duke Willem. Is that his name? Willem H. Pell? Wilhelm. Well, I pronounce it Willem, but like, I know it's Wilhelm. But
the audiobook pronounces it
Wilhelm. Okay, so he gets his invitation from Duke Wilhelm H. Pell to meet with him in the Coterie. Is that what it's called? The Coterie Club, which is above the Coliseum. It's this fancy club. You can only get in if you have like a special invitation or are already part of it or know the right people, whatever. So that invitation arriving interrupts his questioning. So he never really has to deal with it really has to deal with anything, right? But so timing, lots of very good convenient timing. But he does go to the Coterie Club and meets the Duke. And I guess as a femme presenting person, what were your guys' first thoughts about Pell? Because Sedlin is like, this guy's actually really great. And I was immediately like, no.
Well, it's one of those things, I think, where as the reader, there's something up. And I think I'm trying to think if there was anything that like really tipped that off other than from a story perspective, like, there's something more going on than him just being a charming person. I think it was just some like low level sleaze or schmarm. Yeah. That kept creeping in.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah. I just thought it was fairly predictable that he'd end up being a bit of a big misogynist, basically because they were essentially a men's club. It's a gentleman's club, not gentleman's club as in the strip club like today, but gentleman's club in old England, where they all sat around smoking their cigars and drinking their brandies with no women there. So
I think it was the way he talked, right? He says something about, like, you don't need to call me the Duke because I don't, in my experience, if somebody's touting their title, they did nothing to earn it. And I don't know. It was like, to me, the whole thing was schmarm, schmarm, schmarm. Now, he did say, he was talking about Maria, and he said, she is imperfect, but absolutely peerless. And that I was like, oh, okay. Well, shit. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this guy isn't a total schmarmy piece of shit. But
he honestly said all the right things early on.
Yeah,
but there was still something about him that was just like, this dude's no good.
I guess I have like red flag for like a guy who says all the right things. It's like, you're saying too much right. I don't trust you.
You're being too good. I think maybe you're fishy.
That says more about me than it does about Duke Willem H. Pell, honestly.
I mean, yeah, but also you're not wrong.
Exactly. Oh, gosh. So the whole plot line with Senlin trying to convince the Duke to basically sell like stock shares in Maria.
What the fuck, Senlin?
Well, I mean, he knew what he was doing. Like, he did. And I knew he didn't mean it, but it's also just, wow, dude.
But also, like, I mean, on the one hand, I get it. Like, your wife is missing. You haven't seen her in a year. You're trying to get back to her. But, like, he literally, like, the first thing he did when he got there was like, I'm going to ignore everybody's advice. Whatever. I've got this great plan. There's no way it can go wrong. Bruh. What the fuck?
There's no way it can go wrong. Have you not lived through the past 2 books? Like, for real. Has he not? Because...
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that frustrates me about Senlin as a character, right? Like, he does not seem to learn. He's single-minded and stubborn and does not seem to learn from his mistakes. And I'm like, you keep putting yourself into these situations where you could die. And like, he even acknowledges that. Or no, he doesn't acknowledge that. Somebody else says something. Tarot says something about it, about how he like seems to have gone and deliberately kicked like every hornet's nest of everybody who has any power in the tower. And it's just like, yeah, no, that's, I mean, aside from the Sphinx, that's literally what he's done.
But it works out for him so far.
Oh, well, sort of.
I mean, how do you define working out?
Like, he's successfully advancing the plot.
Yes, he does. He does advance the plot. You're absolutely right, Jonathan.
Oh,
My
man.
gosh.
I just okay, so side note, because Senlin is the biggest thing about this, but I do want to point out the Sphinx is all worried about his spies, his little butterfly
Hmm.
spies, but it turns out that it's just birds being birds. Like these little boys trained like they played a game and
Is it?
trained these.
I don't. No, I didn't think it was birds being birds. I think the birds were trained by someone to take out the Sphinx's
I mean, they
spot.
were by little boys. I mean, you might be right, but at this point in time, it's like because they're not just taking like that seemed like it was kind of an extraneous like, oh well, they're also fluttery and shiny, so they're gonna go after them the way, I mean, they're magpies, so that's what they do, right? Period. But particularly like in this case, but the Sphinx was all worried about his spies, and Senlin's like, oh no, it's just the birds, it's fine. uh and that's I mean, I feel like I'm sure there'll be more about that later, the Sphinx being pissed about it, whatever. But
Hmm.
for now, I just wanted to make that point before diving back into holy shit, the Duke is the absolute worst. Okay,
No,
well, and
no.
I gotta take a step back a bit, because before we find out just how bad he really is, Senlin does actually get face-to-face time with Maria.
Hmm.
And that is something. I mean, of course, we learn a little bit more about the world. There's a little more world building. This is another, which we, of course, we know each uh I want to say realm, and I know that's not the right
Ring.
word. Ring, thank you. Each
Ring.
ring has its purpose. And in this case, the ring's purpose is to replace fuses that burn out. And there's these will-o'-the-wisps things that I think there's more about them in the second half of the book, so I don't want to get too into those. But there are these will-o'-the-wisp things that pop up out of the ground that have something to do with it. But the main attraction literally is this sort of
It's Pirates of the Caribbean.
is it
Except that
Pirates of
except that you stop and put
well, it's
fuses
not a
in.
water ride. So I would say it's more like Spaceship Earth. It's Spaceship Earth. That's what it is. It is Spaceship Earth at Epcot. It tells a story of their world, which is what Spaceship Earth does as you ascend through the ride. And then you get to the top. And granted, in Spaceship Earth, nothing really important happens. You just get to the top. And then they're like, technology, blah, blah, blah. And then you go back down to the bottom and it's over. But it is like Spaceship Earth in that you ascend to the top, and then they actually have to do something. They have to replace a fuse to keep the ride going, and it's also part of what is keeping the tower going. So it was a very interesting that, you know, they're all attractions in a way, but this one seemed like this is the first one since the beer me go round that is a full-on just like ride, right? The beer
Hmm.
me go round is people get to get, and also that's even better, man. They get to get
Well,
drunk while they're
well,
doing it.
yeah. I mean, it was the full. It's the only full-on ride, I guess. But you had the LARP earlier. I mean, you know.
um but I mean, I think that I don't know. It was a very interesting little the ride itself is very interesting, right? But more interesting was that Semlin gets face to face with Maria, and she's immediately like, "Take off that stupid mask, asshole."
I know exactly who the fuck you are.
Yeah. Even with his big dumb art, what is it's called the Mask of the Sphinx too, which
Yeah.
is, you
Hmm.
know, hilarious. But you know, she's just immediately like, take off that mask. What are you doing here? I'm fine. And I mean, I think I don't know, again, from like a femme person's point of view, you know, Senlin's like, oh, she says she's fine. She's fine. And I'm over here like, bitch ain't fine. Like, she is not fine. She just wants you to stop, like, she wants you to stop messing with her game. And I don't mean that in a positive way. She is gaming to survive, right? This is some Squid Game nonsense for her. And Senlin is just all up in her business about to screw things up. And but he is just like, oh, she's happy. She's happy.
I guess it's okay.
I'm gonna cry about it, but also, you know, everything's fine. So I don't know. Like, did you guys read that differently than I did? I am curious.
No. Completely the same.
No, no, I didn't see it any differently either.
Okay, so maybe it wasn't just that I'm, you know, femme presenting.
I think at this point, I'm trying to remember.
What were you saying, John?
Now I'm trying to remember the order we learn things.
Yes, don't spoil anything.
I know that's the problem. It definitely happened in this part of the story, but I just don't know if it was. At this point, do we know she has a child yet?
Yes.
Yes.
We learned that at the end of the last.
So I just assumed it was protecting the child. That was my thought process.
Yeah.
So, okay, so he goes through the ride with her. We all agree that obviously she was bullshitting him hardcore. He meets with the Duke again. And the whole thing is a trap. Although here's my question. It actually, even on a second or third, this is my second read of the Hod King. So I've read the first 3 times now. This is my second read of the Hod King. The dancer who calls out Senlin. Did Pell know who she was, or was that actually just convenient for him?
I think it was just convenient.
Okay.
Yeah, I read it as coincidence.
Yeah.
Bad coincidence to move the plot line forward.
So you know, just to make sure anybody who's listening to this now or later is clear, Senlin gets called out by Pell, puts on this big show. One of the dancers actually stops and is like, "That's." I don't know. I think she called him his pirate name, maybe. He had given her his real name. So Pell already knew that he was Senlin, but I don't think he did.
Oh
yeah.
I don't think he did.
I don't think he did either.
Specifically, there's a specific moment after she calls him out where he says, "Oh, there you are." Like he's realizing that it's
I
him.
read that differently, actually. I read that as like he was saying, "Oh, there you are." Like he already knew who he was. I'm honestly, I'm looking it up right now because I feel like
it's also possible. So like, because I'm listening to the audiobook, like the intonation that was chosen in the audiobook could color the way that I heard it.
Okay, so here's how I read it. How do you know Mr. Penfield? The Duke asked the irate woman. He's no mister. He's a pirate, Nancy cried. He's the coward who robbed my father and broke his heart. He stole his books, his faith, his hope. You murdered him, Thomas Senlin. You killed him with despair. When Senlin turned to look at his host, he found him wearing a curious smile. He seemed to have just woken from the most wonderful dream. Ah, there you are, he said. So I could be wrong, and I'd love to actually ask the author that question. I thought, first of all, I feel like the Duke had to have planned out everything that happened next. So I feel like he already knew for sure who Senlin was, and this is just kind of like the frosting on the cake, you know? And I think the reason why I felt that way was something that he said later. Well, first of all, the Duke captures captures him, and Senlin is like, Maria had nothing to do with this. She laughed at me. She rejected me. And then they're in the cellar before he puts the, oh God, what do they call that awful helmet thing? They call it something absolutely awful, but before they put his helmet thing on his head, the Duke, I know that I'm slowing this down a little bit, but I feel like I need to. I feel like there was something in what the Duke said that made me think, no, he absolutely. The odd there you are to me felt like I already knew you were you, but now you've got that look on your face, and it's like, ha ha ha.
No.
Yeah, I didn't read it that way at all, or listen
I
to
didn't
it
read it that way. I read it
really.
I read it more that he, the Duke, suspected Senlin would make a play at some point, but didn't know where he was, and was expecting him at some point. But
oh my gosh, this is driving me crazy.
And then it was pleasantly surprised to find him now.
I read it the same way, Jonathan.
Yeah, and I'm just skimming this, like trying to.
Yeah.
I feel like he actually outright says it, though.
I don't think so. I just listened to this yesterday, and I'm pretty sure he didn't. But it's also possible that I missed it.
Sorry, I can't wait to edit this as a podcast because I
to take out.
Sorry to anybody.
Yeah.
This scene of you looking for the information.
Yeah, it's going to take too much time. I mean, I really feel like he knew ahead of time. I'm not gonna, maybe 2 weeks from now when Nami rejoins us, I can ask her, but like, to me, it felt, or I'll just, you know,
just
actually
find the section where,
because I swear there was something he said after the fact too, but regardless, it felt to me like he had the whole thing planned, right? Like he had this awful helmet thing waiting to just clap it on Senlin's head, and he did so, and then he's like, bye now, you know.
Yeah, but they don't seem super rare. Like there's no indication that the device is rare.
I don't think its existence is rare, but it seems to me that they don't, with as many Hods that go through, you know, with as many Hods that get created, essentially, to me, it seemed like this thing is something that they only put on the absolute worst of them, and that might be like, let's say 2%.
Didn't we see one of these helmets in like the baths right away? Wasn't that the first? I thought we did.
I don't think so. I don't remember.
Yeah, on one of the Hods, did someone witness them making a Hod? I thought they put one of these on in book one.
We'll have to figure this out.
Yeah, we'll have to figure this out later. Regardless,
otherwise we'll spend an hour trying to figure it out.
Senlin gets this awful thing put on his head, which as someone who is pretty, like, fairly claustrophobic, really claustrophobic, which we talked about, I think, last time, honestly, I was just like, no, I can't read this. I can't read this. How long is he? And he's talking about like the sounds, and oh my gosh, it was just absolutely horrifying. Hard. It was horrifying. Thank God. I did thank whomever you worship that Senlin and Turo are able to find Marat's people, and the first thing they do is take that fucking thing off his head, honestly, because that was a lot. And really, like, it was very convenient that the Hod who takes it off his head is the same Hod that Senlin saved. Again, plot convenience. I can't remember what is Sadiq. So they run into Sadiq first things first.
Speaking of of plot conveniences, the next
Yeah.
person they meet is pretty convenient also.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, I guess that it seems like in this case, there are very few places where one can go as a Hod if you are willing to join Marat's cause, right? They exist, but I mean, even Senlin and Tarot had to travel quite a bit before they found, like, Tarot knew where it was, but or had an idea of where it was, but they don't exist just everywhere, right? So
Yeah,
and it also it is plot convenience that Fingal, by the way.
Well, that's the plot. That's what I'm talking about. That Fingold happened to just show up there, and yes, he was made into a Hod also, but because he had his debts that he couldn't pay after his business collapsed due to Senlin, but that he showed up there in this gigantic tower at that point in time. I mean, it seems.
Well, I think that again, because there's so few of these hideouts with it, these I don't know how I call them hideouts, but there's so few of these communes within the tower. So like I said, Senlin and Tarot had to travel so far to get to this one, and I think that I mean Finn Goal especially, of course he is going to, like, he is a transaction man, right? Like, he is going to do what he's going to lie and scheme and do whatever the fuck he has to do to get back to even not necessarily his old life, but he absolutely would be the type that would scheme his way into Marat's people in hopes of gaining something from it, because that's the only way he knows what the life of a Hod is. So when he sees this group of like fanatics who are able to kind of skirt around certain parts of being a Hod, absolutely he's going to join them. If he even has any like possible inkling of a thought that it might help him. So it's convenience.
No, that part I get. What I find implausible is this tower is huge. He happens to be at the exact same place at the exact same time in this gigantic tower where even if there's 5 or 6 of these places where Marat's people are meeting.
I don't know. I mean, Nick, what do you think? Because to me, it didn't seem that way, only because there's so few of them, and New Babel is right below Pelthia. So to me, it was like, it's. I mean, it is absolutely convenient. I don't disagree with you there, but I don't think it's implausible at all.
I thought it was convenient, but I didn't really care.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they've now been just sent to go meet with Marat is kind of like, good luck, guys, I guess.
Of course.
Okay, so on to the, in my opinion, way more interesting, exciting, scary, everything part of the first half-ish of this book. Part 2 is called The Leaping Lady. And all I have to say is, remember like a month ago when we were covering, I think it was episode 36, we were covering parts 1 and 2 of Arm of the Sphinx. And I was like, why do we care about this creepy ornithologist dude? What the fuck does this have to do with anything? Ha ha ha. Well, he is Sleazeball McGee, Sleazeball Fucknuts, the worst person. Puh, puh. He is.
Well, no, you just said the Duke was the worst person.
I mean, there's a lot of worse people in these books.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to comment earlier that I don't even think the Duke is in the top 3 of bad people.
The Duke is the worst Duke. This guy is the worst prince. I'll go with that.
There you go.
So,
use their titles. This person is the worst of this one. But the commissioner is the worst commissioner. He's not a duke. He's not a prince.
The commissioner was pretty bad too.
Yeah, exactly. He's the worst commissioner. What is this guy's name? Do either one of you remember? Because for the life of me, I didn't even write it down.
It's Prince.
But what is his actual name? Like
Oh,
his not his
God, I
surname.
literally
His
heard his name an
Nobody
hour or
cares,
two
right?
ago.
Because he's literally just sleazeball McFucknuts. Like, I'm giving him nicknames because I hate him so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely. This is my like Francis.
Okay, Francis. Of course it is.
I knew it was like an F name because anyway, it doesn't matter
So
what.
yeah, in episode 36 of Sagas and Sass, when we covered parts 1 and 2 of Arm of the Sphinx, and we were like, what does this matter? And I was like, why do we care about this creepy ornithologist dude? And it turns out that he is really important. Like, really important. Also, wow at myself for not recalling that connection, even after having read Arm of the Sphinx twice.
Yeah.
And the Hod
Good
King
job.
immediately after I read Arm of the Sphinx the second time. Most recently, only about 2 years ago, but hey, whatever. So yeah, there's a lot that happens in part 2 of this book. I mean, I left some notes and they're very vague and whatever, but going back to our summary kind of, so Valida and Irene arrive and because they're on the Sphinx's ship, the state of the art, and Valida is the Sphinx's niece, they're given this whole like fanfare, there's speeches, they ride a train, there's like a ticker tape parade, whatever. They go to meet the king. They do the portmaster or whoever it was cages Squit because it's like, oh, we can't have free animals, which is like weird. And also why? Like, so nobody has pets here. Like, I get not having I get not having
It's like a
horses.
quarantine thing.
I don't think it was a quarantine thing. I think it was
No,
like this isn't
I
allowed.
just don't think people have pets there.
Yeah.
That's weird.
But yeah,
No.
right? No, it was the way it is portrayed is that Squit will have to stay in a cage. Wow, Squit will have to stay in a cage the entire time they're there because like live animals aren't allowed, other than apparently the parrots and the magpies, but pets.
I guess like wild animals are okay, but you can't have pets.
Well, to be fair, the wild animals I don't think were on purpose. But
probably not.
The parrots were originally, I think, supposed to spread news, and now they just spread gossip, which was hilarious. But so they, so Valida goes to meet the king, who he kind of reminds me of a less evil, I want to call him the Candy King, but I don't think that was his name. From Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I don't remember what that character's name is either. He reminded me of
he reminded me of the Candy King when you first meet the Candy King. And I don't think that's what his name is, but that's what I'm thinking of him as. So he seems kind of harmless and a little bit silly, and
he reminded me of the Earth King from Avatar.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Like kind of he's just there to like as a figurehead. But he does have some power.
Yes.
So, but he's also really silly. And so he like Valida convinces him to let Squit go. Right? I don't even remember how, but Valida's just
asking a favor.
That's what it is. She just simply asks a favor.
She used her favor because he's like, anything I can do for the representative of the Sphinx.
So and then there's the whole, she gets placed with Xenia and her father as her hosts, and
Marcus.
and her father, whose name, what did you say his name was, Nick?
Count.
He's the
Count of
He's a marquis or a marcus,
yeah, a marquis,
depending on how you
yeah.
pronounce it.
But he's also ridiculous. Xenia is ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, that's the whole point of this whole of Pelfear, right? Like
right.
that's like a whole thing is that everybody is like dramatic and
Mhm.
does all this like basically acting all the
Mhm.
time of like blowing things out of proportion and like drawing attention to themselves and all these things like is basically a requirement of being a citizen of this place. So you have all these super weird people who have all these weird affectations.
And well, Xenia is I mean, it comes out later that I think Anne probably reveals it to Iron that Xenia, like, she should have been married a long time ago.
Hmm.
And I think her father is like just spending her inheritance on his weird clothes and weird wigs, and everything about the Marquis is just so over the top and weird. But oh my gosh, the fact that at one point he hires gossips to
Oh
sit
yeah, that
after
was
his
great.
table. It's a lot. It's a
So that they
lot.
can watch them read the newspaper.
Yes.
Like that's what they're there for is to watch them read the newspaper and then they can go gossip about it.
And poor Valita is just like, God, I hate every part of this.
Oh
And
my
she
gosh,
refuses to wear
Velita.
the wig, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, your weird hair. And she's wearing old fashions. One night she wears like lavender or something, but
Hmm.
that's an out color, and orange is in, which in what
Orange is
world
the color.
orange is that's from like I feel like that's a Legally Blonde reference. Like
There's no way that
orange
legally
is the new pink, right?
Elle would never.
Right? But she would respect it because she's Elle Woods. Anyway, so Valita is just disgusted by all of this and just trying to live, and she goes to her first party and she screws it up because the actress is like, kill this parrot who's talking smack about me. And I don't even that whole scene, and I know the actress was just being over the top, but and Valita was like, why would we kill the parrot? And she kind of downgrades herself, and Xenia's all pissed. But then that night they go back and Valita goes prancing around the rooftops and meets Prince Fucknuts. And it comes out in the newspapers the next day that she's the leaping lady, like crawling around the rooftops in her nightgown, and the prince is taken with her. And now there's this whole new romance thing that has to happen. And then there's Iron, who's just like, because Anne straight up tells Iron, this guy's trouble. Don't let Valita anywhere near him. And Iron's like, I'm gonna kill him. I imagine Iron as Louisa from Encanto at like 60 or
Oh my
50,
god.
right? Like,
Yes, yes, I love that.
like just wanting to protect and save.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Is so important.
gosh, and again, like I wrote the summary, so I love Anne so much, and I refuse to allow either one of you to disagree.
Oh no, Anne is a fucking queen. I love her.
She is just so like, I'm just living my life as a
Hmm.
governess, and I'm doing the best I can with what I've been given. And I'm going to give you all the info and all the tips and tell you how to skirt through the crowds and tell you who the worst people are and everything. I mean, and she's oh, Iron, like, calm down. Like, it's okay. Like, I will help you. It's
Hmm.
very, it's all very sweet. And I don't want to say anymore because I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, I love Anne a lot. And she is kind of this like side character in part two of the Hod King until she becomes not a side character, when she's the one that realizes there's something really fucked up going on, and goes and releases Iron from her fur closet prison. But that's later. So Valida catches the attention of the prince. And I'll be honest, again, it even like, I don't know how it took me too long. Like, I almost feel stupid how long it took me to put two and two together about who this guy was. So did you guys like immediately kind of be like, oh yeah, that's that guy? You didn't?
Yeah, they said it earlier.
I mean, they did, but
It was
somehow
right
it
clear
just,
that he was the person that from the ship earlier in the story. Yeah.
or well, let me be clear. This time around, I caught it immediately as soon as they were talking about some questionable thing that happened and the maidservant that threw herself off the ship.
Yeah.
I caught it this time. The first time I read this book, I absolutely did not. I did not. And I really think it was us talking about him in that episode a month ago that made me finally, when I was reading the Hod King for the second time, be like, oh shit. Which makes me, I guess, a bad reader. I don't know.
Well, if you are, I am too, because I did not catch it.
Yeah, I really didn't. I wish Nami was here so we would have like a fourth opinion, because we're two against one now, John.
Nami
this
probably would.
This minutia I picked up on. Some minutia and some things that are obvious I don't, but this minutia I picked up on.
But so he takes this interest in Valida, and it's and Xenia. What kind of surprised me is that Xenia she's not even like jealous. She's just like, I just want to use your connection or whatever to get myself like leveled up. I mean, and eventually Valida's kind of, well, I don't feel comfortable around the prince, and Valida's like, well, let me handle it. I do. But I don't, there wasn't like a jealousy there. At least I didn't feel that way. Xenia is a very interesting character in that she's maddening, and I don't think she's a good person. But I think she's a product of her world, and I also can't hate her for that. And I feel very torn about it. Like, I feel like I should, especially after what happens at the end here of part 2, I feel like I should hate her more.
But unless I missed something, she didn't cause any of that.
No, I pity her, and I also, in a weird way, respect her, because she recognizes what her issues are. Like, she knows what her father is doing. She knows he's spending away her inheritance. She knows she's getting older, quote unquote, in Pelthian, I should be married by now terms. She definitely, she acts dumber, and I think she acts more vapid than she actually is. So yeah, it's a weird, like, I pity her, I respect her a tiny bit, and also am so frustrated by her. Right? Like, but I don't hate her. And that's, I don't know. It's very weird position to be in. I think she's a weirdly, maddeningly well-written character, honestly. And thank God she has Anne, like, on every level.
Yes. Thank fuck for Anne.
So the end all be all.
The true MVP.
Oh God. Seriously, I just can't with her. And how great she is. The end all be all is they get invited. Well, Valida's whole thing is that she wants to go to see Marya in concert, and she wants to meet Marya. She wants to talk to Marya. And she says at one point, I can't remember. I believe she's talking to Edith after Senlin sends Edith his message. And she is saying that, because Edith is like, well, Senlin says that she's fine and she doesn't want to be rescued. And Volita says, if someone has absolute control over you, it's easy to believe they have absolute power over everything and everyone. They can't be defied or challenged or disobeyed, and every opportunity for escape just feels like a cruel jest. You don't offer a wounded person assistance once and then strut off, patting yourself on the back for the good deed you almost did. Believe me, desperation makes it hard sometimes to recognize help when it comes, to accept it when it's offered. And that, like, seriously, if you have ever been in an abusive relationship, that hits fucking home. Like, it really does. You know, the amount of times that somebody and it offers you help once, Jesus, offers you help 10 times. And it still feels like, what's the catch, right? So
it feels like a part of a trap.
Right, exactly.
Even if you know that person is like super well-intentioned, only really cares about your well-being, it will still feel like a trap.
So I think that was a really beautiful, and that came from Volita's own experience, right? As being part of Rodian's harem,
Menagerie.
essentially. Yeah. And so that really hit home a lot with me. And
Same.
you know, when Volita confronts Maria and Maria's like, no, 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 no. And then the nurse shows up with the daughter. And Volita's like, what now?
Oh, fuck.
And it's like, of course, we already knew, right?
Yeah.
Like Pell, you know, revealed, even though we kind of knew from the end of Arm of the Sphinx, but then Pell like straight up tells Semlin.
Yep.
But now it's like, whoa, you've actually seen the daughter and you've seen Maria, and oh gosh, it's like a whole other level. And then Maria leaves, and Volita's like, well, gonna follow her, and fuck nuts McGee. I'm just elevating his name, or not even just, it's not even evolving. It's just, he's whatever the fuck I want to call him.
It's just variations on a theme.
Shows up, and his whole purpose is to assault her.
Yep. Because he's fuck nuts McGee.
Purpose. Yeah. And of course, Volita fights back. I mean, I don't even want to say of course. Volita is Volita, so she fights back.
Yep.
There's not always an of course. Volita is Volita, so she, in this situation, fights back. Yep. And she has the better of him from one moment to the next, and then he, and then her, and then he shoots her.
Like a fuck nut.
But Anne has rescued Iron from her. Yes. Oh yeah, because the Duke's BFF, who was like, also, by the way, like just like making out with Xenia. Before he was making out with Xenia, he helped lock Iron in the fur closet, and
so far he might be the most decent character we've met too.
And I want to put decent in hardcore quotes because not so much, but but I will say, like, why did it take Anne so long to figure? Why did it take Anne so long to figure this out? Xenia doesn't give a shit. The other guy's involved in it. Why did it take Anne? Really had to think about it. And I'm not hating on Anne at all. But it was like, I feel like Anne is smarter and better than that. And that if it weren't for plot convenience, she would have figured it out sooner.
Maybe.
I don't know. That's my thought. But
there's also, the whole, like, she has a role in the society, and like there's only, she might have felt limited in what she could or should do, and might have been conflicted about that. We don't really get her perspective, so we don't really know what what she was thinking.
Thank God, though, she finds out or figures something out just in time. goes
Mm-hmm.
and Iron gets out of the fur closet. Iron rushes off to and also the moon. There was a moon pendant that Velita had been given by the Sphinx, and there's a moth or something that's like zoned in on it. So Iron is able to follow that moth into the backstage and discover Velita, who thankfully still has a heartbeat. Kills
Fuck nuts.
Prince, worst person ever, and scoops Velita up and runs off with her. And there's this whole like she's running through Pelphia, she's trying to get to the port, she's so worried about being caught. And it's like you think that she's gonna get there, right? Like she has skirted everything. And then she gets to the port, and somehow, for some reason, the Ararat is firing on the state of the art's envelopes, their balloons, right? Which is like rule number 1 of war, which I think we were taught in Arm of the Sphinx, is that you never fire on another ship's balloons. Because that is like they all have the envelopes, right? So if everybody starts doing that, then it's just that it's basically like the one rule of war. You don't do that, and that's what they do. And that is where we're left. We are left with Velita just completely bereft Iron just completely bereft with Velita in her arms, like almost dead, dying, whatever, as she watches what she thought was their safe harbor plummet from the skies. And if that's not a cliffhanger, I don't know what is. So,
we think it's plummeted from the sky. That's what they want us to think.
I mean, at this point, we have no reason to think otherwise.
And I'll be honest, I have not read enough to know if that's where it ends, but I have a feeling it's not true.
I mean, I have a feeling the series couldn't go on the way it has without something else happening. But that said,
we'll find out in 2 weeks.
At this point, the state of the art is plummeting from the skies, and Iron is left with this dying girl in her arms. And this
is a rough one.
Yeah. I mean, again, like when we finished, parts 1 and 2 of Senlin Ascends, or in parts 1 and 2 around the Sphinxes, they both had like a little bit of a cliffhanger, right? A little bit. But this was a very holy shit. Like who is going?
This was next level.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to talk about the next half of this book in 2 weeks.
We're forgetting the ending of this book, actually. It's not where it ended. There was another chapter with Senlin in it again.
Oh, there was. There was?
I believe there was.
Oh, I
think talk about it, but we.
No, I think we kind of covered that earlier. I think so. The Black Trail stuff, it is split into 2, I guess
okay.
I think it might be 3. So after Velita kind of ends, with I'm sorry, gosh, again, after Iron ends with Velita in her arms, that's when Senlin goes into
meets Saduk and Fingal and
Harrow,
and they
we
are
talked
sent
about
on their quest.
Right. So we talked about that earlier. They're going. Senlin is off on his quest with Fingal and Turo to actually
throw themselves at the mercy of
So we
the court.
We basically covered that earlier, but yeah, the end result here is really the important thing, because like who the fuck cares about what the hell Senlin is doing right now, because Valita is on her deathbed possibly, and with iron and everything. So on that note, any last closing thoughts on parts 1 and 2 of the Hod King? I feel like if you guys have nothing to say, I'm gonna read a quote and then close it out.
No, I'm good.
I'm here for the quotes.
I know. I always save so many quotes and then never actually like share most of them. So I think it's more for my own good. But oh God, there's so many. Which one do I want to choose? Because I usually highlight the one that I want, that I like the best. And I've already said the Valita things, which were the ones that really hit home. But I think that I'm going to leave us with a quote from the Marquis, Xenia's father.
Oh,
I don't like people who don't know how to enjoy themselves. The pooping of my parties is simply not allowed.
what a great quote.
It really is. And on that note,
Thanks,
we'll
Marquis.
be back on Wednesday, March 16th with part 3 and possibly more Black Trail sections of the Hod King. I'm Tara, along with Nick and Jonathan. Thank you for joining us for Sagas and Sass, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.